suffering from the consequences.
Which are?
Well, for example, the Union Industrial Estate was bulldozed, and it just became a dust bowl, and there's a village right next to the dust bowl. So for 6 years, people have been suffering from that. Now, it's interesting that the Freedom of Information Act also reveals that the EMA charges compensation to the wrongdoer. But nobody in the La Brea area has ever received any compensation, to my knowledge. Okay. Where does it go? In that case, $74,000 was designated as compensation to be paid by the National Gas Company. There's a case here, $1,372,000 compensation, which is for a land development that wasn't done properly. Another one for more than $1 million. And in the case of that Quarry Road, there was a compensation of $162,500. I would be interested to know if any people affected by the misdeeds actually received any compensation. Okay. But this is very pertinent right now because at La Brea, the people are still living right next to the site, and they haven't gotten any compensation, far less relocation up to now.
Okay. Well, we'll take a short break. As you watch, I want to remind you to send in your comments and suggestions to cleaningupthemess@guardian.co.tt. This is an environmental special on CNC3. We'll be right back. Welcome back to this environmental series on CNC3. My guests today are Jeff Mazur, Chief of the Political Economic Section of the U.S. Embassy, and the Trinidad-based physicist Peter Vine. This one's for you, Jeff. Despite the legislation in the U.S., there has been some major environmental problems caused by industry, well, the least of them not being actually being the oil spill in the Gulf. And of course, you also have various Superfund sites. Do industrial lobbies actually hobble the EPA to work to prevent legislation, and what can be done to prevent pressure from industry?
Obviously, as President Obama has said, the current crisis in the Gulf of Mexico is the largest environmental disaster our country has faced, and a lot of attention will be focused on not only the cleanup now as they attempt to fix the problem, but also what got to the problem. How was the problem caused? How did we get to this point? And I think your question is pertinent. It's important in our system, and I think in most democratic systems, that individuals, including corporations and industry groups and public groups, NGOs, have the ability to contact their government and let their government know what they believe is right and wrong about the way any particular activity is to be administered. And in that respect, yes, the industries across the United States as well as NGOs have access to the government, and it's up to individuals to decide whether they think it's too much or too little. Some people will argue that in fact it's too little. I think the balance has been there though, and you know, both whether it's the EPA that you refer to or other government agencies and regulatory bodies, there are many, depending on the sector and what we're talking about. I think they're charged as parts of the federal government and as state and local governments to do their best to protect the people, to protect the government, the communities, to protect the environment, and hopefully that balance is struck more often than not.
We hope that they're bigger watchdogs than the perception so far has been. And looking at the news coverage of the oil spill, we were struck by reports of the close relationship between the bodies governing safety and the environment and industry that they oversee. So how can that kind of relationship be prevented? And I see you nodding here, Peter, so I want you to take that as well.
Well, I'll begin. I think, how can it be prevented? A close relationship is always necessary, because otherwise that's where the data flows, through people who have the data and people who know, not only from the industry but from academia. The question is there sufficient oversight, and is there sufficient resources in the oversight body to make informed decisions in the right time frame and the right speed that are objective and serve the purposes and the goals of that organization? And I think in this particular instance, yes, there will be a review of that, and people will decide whether that has been done and what changes are needed.
Peter, you had a comment.
Yeah, everybody needs to be more open in order to deal with that problem of business, government being in cahoots. Classic examples from right here. We had this port being built for the aluminium smelter, and it was only by sheer luck we discovered that all this being built on the port was actually dedicated to an aluminium smelter which had been shut down, but work was going on here, and the public didn't find out about it except just by chance. And another example is up till April of this year, compaction was going on that project, which was also supposed to be shut down at La Brea. And well, most people didn't know about it until a certain person walked inside the site and took this photograph, and then was promptly chased out. Here's work going on which is clearly for a project which has actually been stopped by a court order. I don't know what is the answer to break that tie between...
How do you fix this, though?
Exactly, how? Mostly by openness, transparency, honesty, and I would appeal to the engineers involved to obey their own code of ethics. One of the elements of the code of ethics for professional engineers in TNT is that if they know of something going on which is against the code of ethics, even if they're not involved, it's their duty to inform the Board of Engineering.